Hello everyone. We're here to talk about the SQL Server 2012 curriculum. Sitting next to me here is Pete Harris, our courseware planner, esteemed colleague extraordinaire. So Pete, what do you got going for us today?
So we wanted to do this session to talk about the goals that we had for the SQL Server 2012 portfolio. We wanted to talk a little bit about the design process that we used, how we came up with the content that we built. And we'll talk about the exams and the courseware that we built to support the new SQL Server product.
Great. Sounds good. Let's get started.
So first, though, I think we'll take a quick look back at SQL Server 2008 just to kind of reflect on where we've been. The two big courses for SQL Server 2008 were the 6231 and 32 courses. We shipped B versions of those courses in early 2011. We've done exam refreshes to make sure that the content for the corresponding exams reflects some of the new things that came out in SQL Server 2008 R2. We actually aren't making any changes to the courseware for the BI side of 2008. That's a common question that we get. But the neat thing about the SQL Server 2008 portfolio is during that B version refresh of 6231 and 32B, we actually made a really significant bump in NSAT. The table here at the bottom of the slide shows that we've bumped up to 165 for trainer satisfaction for 6231 and 168 for 6232. We knew that there were problems with the quality of the A versions, and we solved that at the beginning of the last calendar year. The other thing that's really cool about it is it was really neat to look at the data to see that the trainers were really covering for the quality of the courseware in those A versions. The student NSAT didn't show a dramatic increase because it was already pretty high in the A versions. So we're pretty solid on the 2008 content, but we're looking forward to getting everybody kicked off in the SQL Server 2012 portfolio now.
So it sounds like made an investment, improved the quality. The trainers have been covering for us to a certain degree there in terms of our quality, but we definitely have got a lot better course, and we've extended the life too because these are now R2.
That's right. That's right. So for SQL Server 2012, we looked at the goals for what we wanted to build kind of in three buckets. The first one is sort of the MSL business goals. We had some really clear things we wanted to do, specifically around making sure that each course shipped as one volume to keep costs low. We had a strategic goal around offering commercial beta versions of the courseware for the first time, and that's really exciting. We had time to market goals. We knew that partners really wanted the content as early as they could get. That dovetails into the beta mock, but we also had some pretty strict time to market goals with respect to shipping the release version of the course. And then for the first time ever in the portfolio, we've actually done a lot of work to make sure that the courseware and the exams map really tightly together, and we'll talk through that when we get into the design. But kind of at a high level, those were sort of the MSL business goals.
So that sounds great. So I don't have to carry as heavy books around because I got a single book. But we're doing a good job on the quality. We're getting the product out into the learning partners, the MCT's hands early, and then they're ready to go as soon as we go to RTM.
Yep.
That sounds great, Pete.
Yep. And then for learning partners, we share those goals. The point I wanted to make here is that these are specific things that we heard from partners that we wanted to take into account when we built the portfolio. Again, get the content early, offer it so that they can deliver it on beta versions of the product, and really deliver a portfolio that comprehensively helps people prepare for certification. And then the last thing is our certification team's been working really hard on the integrity of the certifications, and there's been a variety of discussion about this on Born to Learn with respect to new item types and difficulty of questions and monitoring the exam performance over time and things like that. And we wanted to be really respectful of the work that they've done to keep the quality of the certification program really high.
So we've done a lot for the whole round picture, shall we say, from the partners to the customers, the cert customers. And it's not just the SQL team saying, get the stuff out early. We've got partners, learning partners ready to execute on this.
That's right.
And really know what our customers want to help support the cert. So we went in there strong. Sounds good.
Yep.
So this is a little bit on where we went with that search story. So that's kind of the bow at the end of the whole process, right? So it's got to be a meaningful one. The present can't come unwrapped, shall we say, right?
It is. And I'd also add, with respect to having a really solid story at the end, we started the process making sure that the objective domains that we built both the exams and the courses to map to was extremely relevant and real world as best as we could make it.
So Pete, what is our philosophy? I like that. I didn't know we had one.
You know, we wanted to address this head on. We built the courseware really specifically covering this middle orange section on the slide. We know that students come into training with some prerequisite knowledge. They might meet the prerequisites of the course exactly. They might come in like short. They may be farther ahead. We built the content to map to the objective domain that takes them from day 1 to day 5. And some of them will have trouble at the beginning of day 1. Some of them will meet day 1 really easily. We've built content that'll help the trainers kind of level set the classroom on day 1. And then at the end of day 5, I just wanted to note here on the slide that it isn't our expectation that students will be able to go from day 5 straight into an exam and pass. We really do build the exams and the questions on the exams with scenario-based questions that I think really require that the student is going to have some real-world experience before they are going to be able to go in and pass the exam. That's part of the exam integrity, the certification integrity that we talk to, right? It's not just book smarts, it's real-world experience smarts.
Okay, so and that seems to make sense, obviously. It'd be contradictory if you just walk in a class and come out and that's your final exam at the end and you're certified. So we want to know that they can do the job. What is just to clarify, what is the objective domain?
So the objective domain, we'll talk about how we built it in a slide or two. The objective domain covers the core tasks that are shared between, it's the core tasks that are used to be the fundamental design principles for the courses and the exams. You can go up to microsoft.com/learning and have a look at the exam prep information, and those tasks that are detailed for what is covered on the exam is essentially the objective domain. And we built those using a whole bunch of customer analysis that we'll talk about in a second. And then when they were done, we made them public. And the exam team went off on their way and built the exam questions with no sharing of any sort to the courseware team. And the courseware team took those public objectives and went on to build the content that's in the courseware.
So, good. Sounds like really the framework of everything is moving into that objective domain. Okay.
So here's the slide on the planning process. So we actually spent a lot of time talking to customers across all different segments to figure out what they really do with SQL Server, right? We started with an audience analysis among real customers to figure out what their roles are. We sliced and diced the roles till we found something that we thought met a consistent, accurate view of what people really do with the product. And then for each of those audiences, we went deep into what they did at a task level to make sure that we had an objective domain that represented the actual things people do in those roles. So we talked to almost 120 customers with respect to the skills that they do in a given role. We did a blueprint survey when we thought we had the right set of skills for each role. We got almost 320 customers to validate that and help us prioritize and weight the tasks. That blueprint survey became the objective domain. We also talked with partners as part of the audience analysis to make sure that we were really getting the roles exactly right, so that we had a real world set of certifications to offer.
So Pete, how does this compare, and maybe in processes ballpark of how we've done it in the past?
So I think in the past, specifically if you look at the history of the SQL Server portfolio, we focused a lot more on the features of the product, and the 2008 portfolio was more aligned with sort of the segments of features that were built. And we respected the audience, but I don't think we did as much work as we have in this portfolio as we have in the past.
Okay, so I think sounds like we put a lot of work into the objective domain here and ensuring that we got the right one by talking to more and more people as well, right? So about what they really do, and that's that extra real world piece.
And then the other big difference is we changed a bunch of development and design process in Microsoft Learning so that the objective domains were locked before any of us started building content of any sort, so that we'd all be building to the same objective domain.
Fantastic.
So, and then the other thing on the slide that I'll call out is we absolutely respected the SQL Server team. They had a bunch of personas that they used when they started design well before when Microsoft Learning started. That was sort of the beginning of our audience analysis. And in some cases, we validated the personas that they were using, and in some cases, we tweaked them a little bit. And then also, naturally, with any portfolio, there's some things that are strategic to the product that the people who are working in the field may not know about, new feature type content that made it into the objective domain as well.
So when you say personas, you mean such as the PEMCO Northwest profile?
That's right, the PEMCO Northwest persona, but the metaphors that we used for SQL Server.
Okay, so these are kind of, Mary Jo is a DBA, she's got X amount of years of experience. Right. These are some of her daily tasks and pain points that the product's trying to work on. Okay.
So sort of in chronology, and we'll just wrap up on this slide, we started with the personas. We talked to partners to make sure that we understood who they represented in terms of audience. The partner network has a bunch of different roles that they speak to. We validated that across all of the customers that we talked to with focus groups and with surveys, and then we mixed in a little bit of the sort of new sparkly bits of SQL Server 2012 that represent sort of the strategic direction forward.
Wow, sounds pretty thorough, and it sounds like, yeah, we put the work into place there around that framework or the objective domain to make sure that that's the starting point, as you said, that nobody started until we got that locked.
That's right.
So looks like we identified a few people that we went after here. Huh? These are related to sort of the personas and the groups of types of people in the jobs that we talked to, right?
That's right. We talked to a whole bunch of different people, and we basically distilled it down into these three groups. We think there's a group of candidates that have core skills, and this is really everybody. We think that there are a bunch of skills across the objective domains that everyone who's certified in SQL Server 2012 is going to need to be so well versed in. And then after that, it sort of slices pretty nicely into a role that we're referring to as database professionals, and another role we're calling BI professionals. And this is a little bit of a diversion from the past, where we're not calling out specifically database administrators and database developers. Those two roles from the past are really combined in this portfolio as database professional. And we've seen research that's been really gratifying since the very beginning of our analysis that shows the evolution of these two roles really combining, both from a perspective of administrators, classic administrators that are going to need to be more well-versed in some of the programming type functions, and together with people who are in classic database developer type roles that through the advent of things like SQL Azure and some of the maybe less administration heavy features that we've got that are going to need to pick up some of that administration stuff. So there's this really blending of the roles in the database professional that we're targeting in SQL Server 2012 that I think represents the biggest diversion from what we've done in the past.
So can I clarify here for a second?
Sure.
Just to make sure I got it, I'm a little slow. I've got BI professionals, get it, right? And I know we talk to lots of people, and there's people who are being paid. That's why they're professionals in that space, and they kind of identify. We got the database professionals who are also, coming out of a job and telling us what's important to them, their hiring decisions, everything else. That these are important skills that we used. So to bring that down to earth a little bit with the core skills, what would be an example that the BI professional and the database professional, they both need to know? Is that what we're trying to talk about here?
That's exactly what we're trying to talk about. And you'll see in a couple slides as we look at the way we've laid out the exams for these two paths. The biggest one is, for the first time ever, we're going to be examining at a core level the specifics around T-SQL programming. We think it's a core skill that everybody needs to know, and we've never examined on it before. We had some training on it before, but it's really a fundamental thing, and it's represented really well across both paths.
Okay.
So let's go ahead and we'll take a look at where those common things are. I think I'll summarize first, though, that across the portfolio of what we've built, there's 7 exams. They're localized in the languages here on the slide. They represent 2 different paths. Just like we saw on the previous slide, there's sort of common things, and then there's these 2 audiences. We refer to them as the 2 different paths. With respect to certification relative to 2008, we are going to build upgrade exams so that the certifications from 2008 will have a clear path forward into the new program. And like we've done before with the Windows Azure and Windows Phone certifications, we will be requiring recertification for the SQL Server 2012 certs. It's an every 3 years recertification. Essentially what that means is that during the year you get certified, in the 3rd year following that, you'll need to take some sort of recertification exam to continue to prove that you've got the skills that you had 3 years prior. So it's just an attempt to keep people up to date and make sure that the credential has a lot of value in the industry.
So regardless of what's happening with the product or the version of the product, we're going to say we want to make sure you're still active and using it, and we're going to recert you, right? So it doesn't matter if there's a SQL 2015. Not starting any rumors here, please. But you're going to have that gap. We want to make sure you're still active and on the product, and that goes back to maintain the cert integrity.
Yeah, okay. Currency of use. It's you know, we expected it to be pretty controversial, and the folks who have seen it through the context of the Windows Azure and Windows Phone certifications are pretty solid. They understand exactly why we're doing it. It really has everything to do with keeping the integrity and the value of the certification high.
Great, and I've seen it in other industries, so I could understand that, yes. So it looks like we're getting down to the nitty-gritty here. So, okay, I guess I'll maybe walk us through this a little bit, and I can go as far as to say I would guess you start at the lowest number, right?
Yeah, I think we'll start at the bottom here. So this slide represents the path of exams for the data platform. This is the database professional sort of role path through the exams. Starting at the bottom, this is the exam I referenced a bit earlier. It's the first time we've had an exam on Transact SQL. This is essentially, the exam's called Querying Microsoft SQL Server. It's an exam on the T-SQL language. It gets into the nitty-gritty of the syntax and all of the T-SQL statements that you'd use to do the hardcore programming, sort of at a fundamental level. Moving up from there, 462 is the administering exam. This maps very nicely to the sort of DBA 6231, and I don't remember, do you remember the exam number for 6231? I can never keep that straight.
432 and 433.
432 and 433. Yeah. So both 462 here represents a pretty close match to 432 from the 2008 portfolio. Essentially, it's sort of the classic DBA type information. Moving up from there, 463 is pretty interesting. 463 is an exam about how to build a data warehouse with SQL Server. And this is probably one of the most interesting things across the portfolio, is that this has traditionally been a very BI-centric set of skills. But across the board in all of our research, it's been very clear that building a warehouse and doing the ETL and some of the tasks to get that warehouse in line is something that most all SQL Server professionals are doing.
So it sounds intimidating to me a little bit here. So I want to be just clear. So when you say you're building the data warehouse, are you talking analysis services at this point, or
nope?
Okay.
Nope. This 463 exam covers basically everything from getting data out of disparate sources, making sure that the data of that quality is that the data is super high quality, so using data quality services and master data management and things like that are in SQL Server 2012, and then getting that into a denormalized data warehouse. It's essentially everything in a BI solution up until the point that you'd use analysis services to build data models against it.
Okay, so we're getting into a little bit the extract, transform, load with integration services. So
That's right.
Sounds reasonable. So these are kind of the core skills. Everyone needs to move data around, right?
Right, and you don't have to build a data warehouse. I think the courseware comes at it from the perspective of building a data warehouse, and we set it in the context of building a data warehouse. But the ETL skills could be used to move data from one database to another, and we think that those are really fundamental things that a database professional would need to do.
Yeah, so it's just, it happens to be a data warehouse table type structure.
That's right. That we use as the scenario
whatever that you're putting it into, but it's regardless. It could be going into a standard denormalized database, although integration services could be going to Excel, right, I guess.
That's right, or pulling data out of SQL Azure, or who knows.
Okay.
Yep.
All right, so that seems it seems to make sense to me, right?
Yep.
The data professionals on both sides. Database professional and the BI professional.
And we'll get there in another slide that you'll see that that's also on the BI side.
Okay.
In the BI path as well.
I thought it was a typo at first, so I had to check.
That's right. That's right. Data warehouse is not just for BI professionals anymore.
Okay.
So the next one on this slide is 464. This is for the corresponding exam in SQL Server 2012 to
432.
432. We'll have to double check that and put it in the notes. But the point is, this one maps to the classic database development. It talks about database programming, stored procedures, functions, all the things that are in sort of historically classic database development from prior versions, refreshed, of course, for some of the new things in SQL Server 2012, but sort of a more classic exam from what we've done. And then the top one here is 465, which is a design exam for building basically OLTP, big OLTP solutions with SQL Server 2012.
Okay, so sounds really good. It seems to take a step up through the steps of the basics, right?
Yep.
Everybody needs to know how to query your database, do your select statements, maybe build some simple tables, work with the database, understand the security like we did in the 6231, move data around, build database objects using the data definition language, so making your stored procedures and tables and things like that. And then looking at that in the space of a solution and what else might be going on in the system. Or multiple databases are required, and you might have to allow for extract, transfer, load, and you have your write transactions going on and timing things and the whole overall design of the solution. So I like the story. It sounds good. So
let's take a look at the BI side of it. This will be an easier slide to talk to because straight out of the gate, if we start from the bottom, you'll see that the bottom three exams here in this path for business intelligence, they're the same. We think that for BI professionals, the three bottom exams on this slide are the same three exams that we want the database professional to also be competent in. So querying, the T-SQL exam, 462 is the administration exam, 463 is that implementing data warehouses, which is basically the SSIS and data quality type skills. And then from there, there's a divergence. Now on the BI side, this second from the top is 466. This is a new exam called Implementing Data Models and Reports. This is basically everything from a denormalized data warehouse through all of the new intelligent reporting in SQL Server 2012 with Power View and things like that. So it's building the new data models using both kinds of data models that are in SQL Server 2012 and all of the cool new reporting. And then 467 is also a design exam. In this case, it's designed from a BI solution perspective.
Okay, so as you said, we kind of saw the basics there across the bottom. I do see a couple exams, just specific to the BI professionals here, right? And that's a change, isn't it, Pete, from what we did in the BI space before?
It's a distinct change, yeah. For 2008, we had 3 courses and 3 exams, and represented the SSIS, Integration Services, SSAS, Analysis Services, and SSRS, Reporting Services. And here in 2012, it's much more scenario, much more related to the role that we think the people have, split along these 2 lines with 463 the data warehouse, which is sort of data quality and integration services.
Okay.
And then 466, which is the new data models, the two kinds of data models and analysis services, and all the new reporting stuff together.
So we took those. There's more there because you've mentioned data quality and some other new features. But you've taken your three sort of topic areas that we had on 448 before, and broken out the integration services there in terms of moving the data. Thought everybody should know that. And then that's left us with the reporting services and analysis services in this 7466.
That's right.
Okay, and that'll also allow us to go a little deeper on the exam,
right,
too, to really validate those skills.
And it maps exactly to the audience research that we did, where people in BI solution development type roles almost universally do both the data model development and the reporting. And sometimes it diverges in large organizations where some people just do reporting, but we've got a solution for how to handle that in the courseware later. But in terms of who we're certifying, 466 really represents that core BI developer sort of persona.
Okay. So it looks like we have the courses now.
Right.
Okay.
So there's not a lot of new information on this slide other than the marriage of the mapping that we talked about. So again, going back to the beginning of the design, we built objective domains. We agreed on the objective domains, and then exams went one way, courseware went the other way, and we built content to map to those exams. And here's the course to exam mapping that we're really, really excited about. So partners now can say, we were offering this courseware, and it's designed directly to help you prepare for this particular exam. There's no one course over two exams or two courses over one exam or anything like that. It's a nice one-to-one mapping. And this slide has the numbers there. 10774 is the querying course that maps to 461. 10775 is the administration course that maps to 462. 10776 is the database development course that maps to 464. And then 10777 is the data warehouse course that maps to 463. And 10778 is the data models and reporting course that maps to 464.
So I think I've got a question that probably some of us are wondering here is how many days here?
That's the other thing that's really great about talking about the portfolio is in the past, in 2008, we had this matrix of which ones were how many days. For SQL Server 2012, every course is 5 days. We heard loud and clear that 3-day courses were difficult to schedule. There were idle days for MCTs who couldn't fill the other 2 days in a week. So for SQL Server 2012, all of these courses are 5 days.
So 5-day courses, one course, one exam.
You got it.
Got it.
So we built a lot more than just exams and courseware. This is just a glimpse at those things. All of the content's up on Microsoft.com/learning. If you look for technology under SQL Server, you can find references to all of the stuff that we're building. There's 23 MS Press books coming out. There are 10 that map specifically to the exams across a couple different types of books. We've got an ebook that there are sample chapters up online right now. There's a couple of videos, we call them the snacks, that represent what you'll hear the SQL Server team talking about in all of the launch activities around their 3 core pillars of mission critical confidence, breakthrough insight, and the cloud on your own terms. And I'm really happy to talk about this last part here, that the master's program is also getting revised. The SQL Certified Master Program is being revised for SQL Server 2012. There's going to be a master program that's very similar to the 2008 program, but brand new for SQL Server 2012, there's going to be a BI master certification, which I think is really exciting. Kind of that above and beyond the highest level certifications to really demonstrate serious expertise in the product.
That is exciting. I see a lot of activity in the news, topic areas around business intelligence, everything. So to see us have that extra step there, it really seems to fit into place. So to be clear, we've got 2 basic kind of paths of end states of people, that these personas that we had, and they told us what they did. So that's kind of where we go up the stack to certify to, and both stacks now extend in the master's area.
That's right.
And how does that fit to the Microsoft Partner Program. Is that how the Microsoft Partner Program looks at it as well?
It is actually. It's one of the reasons that it's built the way it is some combination of us helping them understand all of our audience research, and the program kind of defining the criteria that partners need to have and who's on staff at the partner locations and the certification requirements that they have. So it does map really nicely to the partner network as well.
Oh, great. And so hopefully our partners will be hiring our customers, right? And are our customers as well.
Almost like we planned it that way.
Yeah.
Yeah. I will say, though, and I don't think this is in the slides anywhere, we're talking about the exams today, and we're talking about the paths that those exams kind of relate to. We're not actually announcing what the certifications are until mid-April. We're launching the SQL Server certification program in mid-April with all of the specifics about how you can achieve a certification. These are sort of conceptual, organizational slides that help you understand the two different paths for who we built it for, but they don't necessarily represent the certifications. All that'll be announced in mid-April.
Okay, so what other dates do you have for me?
It's funny that you asked, Colin. I have a slide right here that talks about the dates. We've been working on this since the sort of middle of 2011, and things have started to trickle out live since fall. The snacks and the ebooks have been online since, I think, about September last year. The beta courseware, I'm very excited to say, has been live since the early part of February. I know for a fact that there's a public delivery of the 107.7.8 that's happening next week. It's the first known delivery that I know of. I'm not sure who else has been delivering it, but I'm really excited to hear that the beta mock is starting to get out there and hit the classrooms. We've done our own beta deliveries from a development team perspective, and they've gone very, very well. We're really excited to lock down the content post-beta. The SQL Server launch, there's a virtual launch event on March 7th that'll start the kickoff of all of the launch activities for SQL Server. The beta exams are coming in mid-March, and they'll be available. They'll be announced on Born to Learn, and we'll do a short beta period for the exams to make sure that those are all in good shape. The courseware releases, everything will be released by the 25th of May. I think it starts trickling out on about the 18th. And that's final courseware for the product. And then the final exams will ship sometime mid-June. And then everything will be live and will be full speed ahead with SQL Server 2012.
Okay. So that's a long runway of all kinds of exciting things happening. And I know everyone's already got their Snack Viewer installed on their Windows Phone 7 devices. And,
that's right.
They'll be all ready to go to SQL launch. So that's exciting. So we got these. What are some of the other things we need to be concerned about? You know, I guess our trainers, classrooms, other aspects.
That's right.
There's some other things we should talk about.
There's a couple tactical things I wanted to mention for the classroom. We worked really hard on a VM plan that was comprehensive across the portfolio that was both everything we needed and as simple as possible. So I just wanted to call out here that the student machines will require hardware level 6. That's the minimum level. The VMs, especially in the BI side of the portfolio, need at least 8 gigs of RAM. They run better with more than that, but they need at least 8 gigs of RAM. On the host, the change here is Windows Server 2008 R2 with SP1, and the reason is that we're using some of the dynamic memory features of Hyper-V this time around that requires SP1. So we'll use base 11A for that. Then there's 3 VMs across the entire portfolio. There's the domain controller, takes a little bit of RAM, and then the Miami SQL 1 VM is used for courses 107, 7.4, 7.5, and 7.6, and then the SQL BI VM is used for 7.7 and 7.8. Common set of VMs across the courseware. We wanted to make it as simple as possible for the MCTs to get going and teach this stuff. The other thing I'll call out is there's a brand new virtual machine that's a threat management gateway VM so that we can have SQL Azure access in the classroom for the first time. So there's a VM that can be added to the mix that proxies the student machine internet connection into the VMs so that the labs that we've built for SQL Azure can do a direct connection to SQL Azure through this gateway.
Oh, so you're telling me we've got a little bit of SQL Azure going on here if we want.
There's a little bit of SQL Azure going on, Colin. What we did for SQL Azure it's a pretty common question that we get, where's the SQL Azure exam? Where's the SQL Azure course? Really specifically what we did for SQL Azure is we didn't call it out as a specific thing because it's a feature. What we did is we integrated SQL Azure into the portfolio wherever we thought that it made sense for a task to use SQL Azure. So you'll see it sprinkled throughout the courseware. We've got some training or some guidance, I suppose, up in the MCT wiki that helps trainers understand where they're going to see it, how to prepare the labs and the gateway VM and things like that. But essentially, it's integrated throughout. We've got options for how to do the labs with SQL Azure. For example, we've got some guidance for how to do 107.7.4 only using a SQL Azure connected database, not using an on-premise or in VM database at all, which we think is a completely valid scenario. Yeah, it's a pretty exciting story so that our partners can really start introducing SQL Azure to customers who need to know it.
Well, that sounds fantastic. And so when you say as a feature, SQL Azure, you're looking at it as this is just sort of a software as a service. Microsoft manages it. It's still SQL. It's just not installed local. So that opens all kinds of exciting possibilities to me. So you say student Azure accounts here, so perhaps they can then connect to that instance from home.
That's right.
And play around with it too.
That's right. And we'll have information up on Born to Learn. There's a program right now. I forget what the program is called. Do you remember the name of the program? I don't remember the name of the program, but there's a program up on Born to Learn where partners can go to register students who are coming to class. They can get the SQL Azure accounts ahead of time so that they can use it during the classroom and then keep their data alive. I think it's a 30-day trial account that we're providing at the moment. That's going to be subject to change as we sort out exactly what the future of the program looks like. So keeping an eye on Born to Learn is the best way to keep an eye on what we're offering for student accounts for the classroom.
Okay, so that's another kind of good heads up is, we've got some other extra things going on in these classes. We simplified our VM story to some degree, though we allow internet access and access throughout the classroom. So we got the threat management gateway to protect the student computers and allow these VMs that are named the same right on the same network. There could be some additional setup that they can check on Born to Learn, and the Campaign Factory was
Campaign Factory. That's what
we're
it was.
going for.
Yep.
But they'll get some guidance there. But there's a couple extra steps into configuration, but I think it'll be worth it. Really, that extra value of students using SQL Azure.
I can tell you that in the 107.7.4 beta, we ran it both ways in the same room. We had some students that were connecting to SQL Azure and some students that were using the database on the VM. And the students had a really positive reaction, the ones that got to use SQL Azure, because a lot of them have never touched it before. And they thought it was really a neat experience, and really neat that they were able to keep it active for a few days after they got back, so that they could continue to try some of the things they learned during class.
Yeah. Okay. Great. I'm glad. And of course, for those of you who don't know, you use your existing tools. It's not like they're going to this website necessarily. They can use the same tools and do the same experience as everybody else in the classroom. Yep. And that's part of the strength of the story there around SQL Azure. That's great that comes out. So you mentioned a couple things, and I think this is where you got to. We talked about our personas. We talked about different people who have different reasons to come to the classes. You talked about a division of workload in the BI space, right? We had the movement of data, and we talked about some of the reporting team versus the data warehouse team, and some other features. So it sounds like you're giving us some guidance here.
That's right. I think the short version of this slide is we built 5 5-day courses, and we know that is that maps very nicely to the audiences that we've done the research about. We believe that that's a good sort of top level. We know that those aren't the students that are always coming to look for training. So this is just an example of some of the ways that we think that people can address some of the secondary audiences that we didn't build specific courses for that still want training, right? What we did to support this is the modules and the labs were designed for modularity so that they can be sort of put together in a bit of an ad hoc plug-and-play sort of way to address some of these audiences that are maybe were the second tier for us that we know that the partners are going to see asking for training. There's a couple obvious ones that we've put here on the slide, but I think there's going to be any number of combinations of custom deliveries that'll work with the content that we've built. Notably, there's this sort of information worker audience that we haven't addressed out of the box that will probably want some content from the T-SQL course about how to build queries, 107.7.4, and some information about how to use reporting services so that they can use those queries to display data. And we think that there's a hybrid there, maybe the first 4 days of 107.7.4 together with a module or two from the reporting course 107.7.8 that could be targeted at information workers as a custom delivery for building simple reports. Another one is just doing the data quality. There's a new persona that we didn't target specifically called a data steward that has a lot to do with the quality of the data in their organization that may not do any of the movement or transformation of that data. They may just be focused on the quality of the information in their organization. And we think that just modules 7, 9, and 10 out of 107.7.7 could be offered as a smaller delivery just to focus on data quality for those types of people. And then the last one that we've got on the slide is just the reporting audience that isn't actually doing any of the building data models. This is maybe a little bit, maybe the information worker or the programmer information worker. We think that a hybrid delivery of 107.7.8 that just included the reporting and visualization piece could be another smaller delivery to hit that audience. So I think there's a lot of different ways that we're going to see partners using the content, but mostly the point here is that we designed it so that you could address some of the custom audiences beyond just what we built the portfolio for.
Good. Good. I'm glad we thought of these scenarios, giving a little guidance here.
Yep.
Okay, so what do we got to do?
So the beta mock is available. It's available now. We've got a lot of information and discussion going on in the forums where trainers can get assistance. There's the feedback from the deliveries that we've done. I know that the instructors that taught the betas are starting to put instructor guidance up on the wiki. There's a lot of questions starting to come into the forums around classroom setup and things like that. We're primed and ready for people to start getting their hands into the content and trying it. We're making our last beta fixes, and we're getting some feedback from the forums there on the beta content as well. And we're ready to help. We're ready to see it out in the wild and being delivered to students.
So Pete, thanks for everything today. One question, because I do feel that the beta mock is so important, right? It's done, it's ready, seemed to go fairly well. We've got guidance so that people can teach it right now. Should go ahead and schedule. We got a little room until we get to our final courses coming out. So what version of the product again are these beta mocks placed on?
Great. So the beta version of the courseware ships with VMs that are built on SQL Server 2012 RC0.
Okay, so that's basically done, right? It doesn't say Denali in it.
Nope.
Or anything ancient like that. Oh, okay. No, that's great. I mean, it gives for those people who want to use the product now. That's basically the product, right? It's as you say, release candidate 0 is what that stands for, right? So, sounds fantastic. Thank you very much for your time, Pete.
Thanks.
Thanks everyone for joining.
We'll look forward to hearing your feedback.